A couple weeks ago, we did a jam session between Monica, Erica, and myself. And in the beginning of the jam session, we talked about Loren was leaving for 10 days. Erica definitely cried during that jam session. But we talked about that Loren was going to be going through a 10-day silent meditation retreat. And she did come back after those 10 days. Which
I made it all 10 days.
Here she is.
She made it all 10 days. And we kind of shared a little bit. Monica and I, we did this same 10-day meditation over a decade ago.
I think it's 12 years ago.
12 years ago, before kids, before practice. We were still in chiropractic school. So Loren being in a completely different phase of life than we were at that time. But what we're going to do today is we're going to chat a little bit about some of the lessons that she learned. And, when I was really thinking about going through that process 12 years ago, this 10-day silent meditation retreat, which is called Vipassana, it was foundational for the work that we do here at REV. And at that time, we didn't know that that was going to be the case, but we learned so much. And so hopefully today's video will share a little bit about Loren's experience, but also then how we can apply it to the work that we do here at REV and things that you can take away from it as well.
And it's actually Vipassana.
Oh, Vipassana.
We said Vipassana. Yeah. It's easier to say. So you're going to hear us say both. But maybe share with them what it is.
Yeah, sure.
So Vipassana means to see things as they are, to see things clearly. And I think the main draw to it that I had was I really wanted to embody that for my own personal life. And also in here, we're working with people who we've talked about this, of just how stress builds up in our body, and that affects how we interact with each other, with yourself. And so, the whole thing is basically teaching you how to see things as they are. Because imagine if a moment was just a moment and we didn't react to it, which is what we typically do. The habit patterns of our mind is we have an unpleasant sensation or an unpleasant experience and we want to avoid it. We want to get rid of it. Or we have a very pleasant sensation, a very pleasant experience, and we want more of it. We want to crave it if it goes away. And both of those scenarios are causing some form of misery or suffering. And so when you can practice embodying how to see things as they are, you remain equanimous, you remain balanced mind. And so despite whatever's coming in your way, in your life or around you, you learn how to stay balanced throughout it. And you understand the law of nature that everything changes. So whether it's something pleasant, unpleasant, we'll get into a little bit more, but I'm kind of skipping ahead here. But one of the whole 10 days you're building upon the meditation of the technique, and they train you. And you get to the point where you're actually doing the Vipassana meditation, and you have to sit for one of the meditations at a time. You sit for an hour at a time, and they ask you to do it with strong determination. So you sit for an hour and you try not to move. And the whole point is to be aware of the sensations of your body. And, obviously your mind is wandering. That wasn't too hard, but, you have an itch on your nose. You can't move to scratch it.
Oh my gosh.
And that was so key and fundamental to you. When you don't react, when you don't have a reaction to an unpleasant sensation, and you just sit with it. And I just had to observe it. And that just all highlights of not, again, just reacting to that. But there's a point I was going to say to that. But yeah. Everything arises and passes away. An itch on your nose does not stay there forever. I still don't have that itch on my nose. Right?
So terrible.
So it's really it's like these micro experiences to practice that and train your system and train your mind and your body to just be aware and to know that this will change too.
Yeah, I want to go more into some of the concepts, but I think a lot of people that know that you went, they want to know what the setup was like and the experience. And we haven't actually really talked too much about it because we also wanted to honor your experience. You shared a little bit. We knew we were going to do this video at some point in time, but what you said to us, one of the first things was, you didn't tell me how hard it was going to be.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole,
I was like, thanks guys.
We wanted her to have her
You
own.
probably wouldn't have liked that if we said that. Maybe.
No, it's perfect.
And it was beautiful and perfect, but it's 10 days of just, because I don't think we even said it, it's no talking to anyone else, no phones, no fragrances, no journaling,
books,
no books.
They don't even say to do yoga.
Yeah,
right?
no distractions.
No stretching, just
no eye contact.
And it's 5 times a day that you do the 1 hour meditations, or
3 times. You're meditating basically all day, but there's a little more you can do it in your room or the hall, but there's 3 times a day that's the very, very serious. I mean,
No movement.
No movement.
I calculate, I think think it's 10 hours a day. I
Yes.
remember after we did it,
Oh my
it's 10 hours a day
gosh.
for 10 days.
17-hour days. Who's counting? I was. You wake up at 4 a.m. to 9 p.m., just no distraction. That was, I think, the jarring bit of it, like on day one. And day one felt like the longest week of my life. And I was like, oh, this is how slow time moves when you're not being distracted. But no, for sure, like day 2, 3, it's getting kind of hard. I'm like, okay, knowing Matt and Monica have sat here and done the same thing really did help. So yeah, it was definitely hard.
So it's actual like a retreat, and there's places all across the world. Like this is just one that's near us. It was like 5-6 hour drive from here, so South Georgia. But 10 days, and you stay at a place. Loren had her own room, which was great. Back in the day, I had to share it with like 10 people with bunk beds.
Own room, own bathroom. It was
Yeah, so they upgraded for Loren. I'm so happy for her.
It was so awkward when we were there with 5-6 other people, and like you're not supposed to look at each other.
Yeah, like I slept. There was bunk beds all around me. You had to sign up to use the shower and the bathroom and all these things. But then there's a meditation hall that you're meditating in, and they cook for you, and they're the most amazing people. You're not talking to them, but they're the most amazing people, amazing food, all given for you to provide you with this beautiful experience, knowing that it is very challenging and not talking at all. Like we said, you have a couple of windows of time to ask questions to the mediator,
the teachers,
and that's it. So I remember like day 5, I think I finally asked a question, and it was like hard to talk. I was like, how do I talk? It's been so long. Like, I don't know. It was a wild experience.
Yeah,
very wild.
But not talking wasn't hard for me. I was actually completely fine.
That would be so hard for me.
Matt had a hard time.
Yeah, that'd be so hard.
It would be very hard for me, and I'm sure it would be hard for you. You're not supposed to also look at people, but I mean, you're obviously going to see people and you can kind of glance, but you do your best to not be stimulated. But the men and the women are separated in different areas. And then when we all come to meditate together, men are on one side, women are on the other side. And like this day, like 2 or 3, and like it did feel like the longest year of my life, those last couple of days. And I'm just like, I would always check over to the women's side just to make sure Monica didn't leave.
Because people actually do leave. Like Loren saw people leave.
And
like yeah.
I remember looking at Monica, and she was just like easy. Like it was like she was in bliss. I'm like, she looked like she could be there for another 10 years, like, and be totally fine with it. So it was definitely way more challenging for me, but yeah, 100%.
Yeah, but it was such a refreshing. You got to find out exactly what was the challenge. Why was it hard? And so, like for me, like I had one meditation where it was like everything coming to this moment of like how hard it was, and I was like, oh, I just miss my life. Like I just wanted to go back to my life, and and my really what they are attachments. Like I miss my comforts. I miss my wife. I miss my dog. I miss the things that I'm used to, and I had to have this like full circle moment of like, this is my life. Like right here in front of me, this present moment is my life. And it was such a humble experience, because even for those 10 days, it's all intentional. I mean, first of all, the whole thing is free. If it's your first time, you're not allowed to donate, because people who have already who've gone through the experience, that's who donates, because it's been that life-changing. But with that comes your ego doesn't really have a place to exist. And that was really profound too, because all day you're being served, you're being taken care of, and you're just with yourself, and you have nothing confirming, oh, I'm Loren, I'm 33, I'm a wife, I'm a chiropractor. Like there's none of that, because no one's asking. You're not talking.
Not talking.
And you're being served these beautiful, like these delicious meals, and by people who are serving too. And it's just a beautiful space. But yeah, the challenges were like, you were the only one to look at it and to sit with it and to move through it. And that was just so powerful in itself. But
I think you're probably really grateful. I was really grateful that you had tools of like being aware of yourself before going in.
For sure.
Because at the last day you get to speak to everyone and like, how was your experience? And there was a lot of women, I'll never forget this, that had a really, really hard time because they never met themselves in the quiet before, or met themselves in that way before. And for that all to slap in their face. It's very overwhelming. I'm so proud of them that they made it, but I think that you were probably grateful for the tools that you'd be like, yeah.
I will say this too, for someone who's like, oh my gosh, I cannot be alone with my thoughts for 10 days. It's not really like that. They actually do a really good job of teaching you foundation. Like you're working on something every time. Like the first few days, you're really training to practicing to focus your mind, because our mind will take off. You don't even know how you got there and when you got there and how long you've been there because you just haven't paid attention. So you do have something to continuously work on, and you have the tools, and you feel really supported by that.
Yeah, I think I do want to get into like the layers of it, because it's like 3 or 4 different main concepts. First, like becoming aware, getting that mental clarity, then the body scans correct, and the feeling and the sensations, which we'll get a little bit deeper into.
Yeah.
And then when those sensations come, not having the judgment or the desire for more, and having that equanimous state, which we'll maybe get into a little bit. Do you have something you wanted to say?
No. It's not about that exactly. I mean, I have a lot to say about this, but I think that like whenever you came back, like there were so many things that shifted you, and I would have probably said you are a person that lives in an equanimous state, but then to see what like truly 10 days of slowing down old patterns has looked like, I was amazed, shocked that you went through such a change. And we talk about it every day, like people that show up year after year in here, like they go through that change in like a longer period of time, but from when you left to when you came back, I'm like, who is this woman?
So I had a profound experience, and I maybe can share a little bit in a little bit. I know Monica had a wonderful experience. I do have a question though for you. You have been on a journey, like when we first did this, like we were in the beginning stages of our internal healing journey, right? So it was like profound for us. You have been on a journey for 10 plus years as well. So for you, it might not have been this aha moment. This is what, I got this out of it. But like after 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 days, you got into it, you went in, like, was there a lesson that came out that could be simplified for people?
Yeah, no, thanks for asking.
You're welcome. I've actually been dying to ask you because you haven't said it,
Yeah.
but I wanted to wait till
Waiting for this moment.
It wasn't anything like, oh my gosh, mind blowing, but it was, which I think is really good because that means I've integrated it, like whatever shift you have. And I was equanimous, I guess, if you will. That's a word that's used quite a bit that I heard a lot every day. But I think the biggest piece for me, the aha moment for me, was I didn't realize how stuck I was intellectualizing my life and my patterns. And, I'm someone who's like, oh, why did this happen? I wonder it's because of this. And maybe because and I would just dissect and dissect and dissect. And I learned that while that's good to have awareness, true change comes at the experiential level. And I think it's just so interesting because I know that in here, but this was a beautiful opportunity for me to spend 10 days in the experiential, environment of my body and of my nervous system, and to quiet down the mind and to really, like, it was just a good reminder and of that, of not being stuck in my head. I didn't realize how in my head I was about things. And we think that's the move. We're like, oh, this is how I'll figure out this, blah, 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 and I'll find the answer by the end of this thought train. And it doesn't work like that way. You don't feel true shifts and true changes unless you spend time here and like really noticing, getting into your body, getting into the sensations that we experience, because everything starts as a sensation. And then we have a thought to it or an emotion, or we like that or we don't like it. And then that's where we roll and our mind rolls. So it was just that was probably the biggest takeaway, is the reminder of like, oh, wow, I've really been in my head about things because I feel something in my body. I'm like, oh, is that because of this? I did this one. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. It's good, again, get to know why, but I would just roll and roll and roll into it.
And would you say that because you went through this process, those thoughts still maybe come up, right? But you're more aware of them faster now?
I'm more aware, and I have a tool now.
Yeah.
Like that's, I think, also the coolest thing is like I've meditated before this, I've known how to meditate, but this, I have such a solid foundation in like what to do. And really what I liked about it is it felt productive. It wasn't just closing my eyes for an hour and like, okay, it's over. You're doing work like in the meditation. You're not thinking about anything. You're just, again, like when I said slowing down the habit patterns of the mind, if something comes up and you don't react to it, and you let it pass, you've slowed down the habit pattern of the mind of reacting, because you're not reacting. You don't realize how often you're reacting. So if you slow down reaction and things and just let it arise, you're genuinely like moving in the right direction towards balance, because you're not doing that anymore.
You share that analogy, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, about the water and the hot rock thing, like whenever you become water. Yeah, I think you should share that. But that's the biggest thing I noticed from you from an equanimous place. Like we're listening to all this, what's his name?
S.N.
Goenka. Yeah.
Goenka.
Like the guy who created this, I guess. But we've been listening to his discourses. I didn't go, so I'm just like on the back.
Let me tell you about it.
I'm giving her the cliff notes of my experience.
But what I've noticed is, like, in the past, a thought would come up or an emotion would come up, and you and I are like, let's work with this. Like, let's use this. Let's have a conversation about it. But actually, what that does is just keeps adding more fuel to the fire. And S.N. Goenka was talking about on one of the meditation or discourses the other night that he was like, it's kind of like the steaming coal, like that's on fire, and it hits water, and it will eventually keep doing that until the water will finally balance out. I think you could probably share it a little bit more eloquently than I can.
You are cooking something over fire, and the fire's out, but the coals are still hot, and you want to cool down the coals. So you put water on it to cool it down, to change its state. And at first, there's this experience, it's a little bit like that's the pattern coming to the surface. But if you keep pouring it, it becomes cool. So it's like it doesn't have any more I guess nothing keeping it alive, because you're putting a new pattern. Now it's shifted, it's not hot anymore. So it's the same analogy too of like, if you were to stop eating one day, you can go on a few weeks, a few
fat reserves
months. You have things that you're still existing, but if you completely stop eating, you're not feeding yourself literally, you die. It's the same things with patterns. If we're not feeding the reaction, then it has nowhere to go and it gets moved through. So yeah, I think I have such a deep understanding of like the work and meditation and how that can really find balance.
How has your energy levels shifted since being back?
Great.
I would say so. I mean, it's more like whatever energy I have is what I have. I'm at peace with it.
The reason I ask is because we work with so many people that are also like this. This is, I would say, a majority of women that are constantly ruminating in their thoughts. Like you were saying, how you used to be like analyzing everything like this and this and this, this. And that is actually requiring a lot of energy in the body to do that all the time. So through my experience there as well, like, and just my life experience that I'm working as well, it's like when those thoughts are coming up, you have a choice to jump on the train to continue that thought process. And that train is burning a lot of energy, burning. But I think through this process and the lessons also through REV, like of just slowing down the patterns, is like you see the train coming and you're like, you know what, I'm good. I don't want to go on the train anymore. Like I want to use that energy for something else. That's why I was curious if that shifted anything.
I actually just chatted with someone recently in a consult who, same idea, like would ruminate and find out why and all these things and like intellectualize. And the way that her body responds was just knocking her out. Like she would just be very fatigued, had nothing left in the tank. And again, it's not the expending of energy physically, it was just mentally, just dissecting and dissecting. Yeah.
You said something, the work, right? We talk about the work all the time, and that's a saying that we say a lot, right? But a lot of people outside of our circle, when I say that, they kind of give me like a blank face. The work is going inward, right? People come here to REV, they have 1 or 2 30-minute sessions a week or every couple of weeks, and like that's the only work that they put in on their table time. And yes, we're there to help accelerate that process and allow them, but you did a deep work going those 10 days. The reality is 99.9% of people that are watching this are probably not going to have the time, space, and freedom to be able to do that. And you said something about the whole point of what you went through and what you learned is that to not react, right? Because when we react, we're coming from a lower vibration, we're not in our power, we're not equanimous, and it's right, really to find balance. So my question is then, like, can you take anything and kind of share a little bit about the process? And I think the first part you said, the Anapana meditation, like first becoming aware and then going deeper, like what can people do on a daily basis to put in the work? And what does that look like from like a real life, like practical use kind of thing? And again, we don't want to substitute the 10 days of what you learn, but like most people aren't going to do that. Like what can they do to gain some of this wisdom?
I mean, there is beauty in meditation, and I don't want to say that, because I think meditation has been watered down because it's, just meditate, just focus on your breath, just meditate, just focus on your breath. But like to really sit very, very intentionally and carve out 10 minutes, like starting with 10 minutes. And this is the first thing that we did when we got to the retreat or to the course, is called Anapana, which is just you focus on your nostril, like your nostrils basically, and your breathing, your natural breath. You're not forcing your breath. You're just noticing your breath. And the point to that is literally to train your mind to pay attention because what you're going to find with, even if you just put an alarm for 10 minutes, is you're going to, okay, this is easy. I can focus on my breath. And then you're somewhere else.
7
and you don't even
seconds
know
later.
how you
Maybe
got there.
4 seconds later.
Yeah. You don't even know how you got there. And then you just come back to your breath. And then it's going to happen again over and over and over again. But the more that you do that, the more, like, the quicker you'll come back, And again, that's just training the mind. The teacher called it like we're doing very deep surgical procedure of the mind. And he said, he's like, if you want to change, like all the great teachers have said some version of this, of you have to like know thyself. You have to know what is going on here. So you have to spend the time doing that, to carve out that time. Because if not, we're just on autopilot, So it's just starting out. But that was like the very first thing that we learned. And I wouldn't, it's important not to skip that part, but just to focus on your breath with no intention, like no, like any other movement, just your natural breath. If it's deep, it's deep. If it's shallow, it's shallow. If you only feel it in one nostril or the other, that's fine. But just notice your breath without any thoughts, without reacting to it.
I was astounded on how bad I was at just maintaining awareness of my breath. But they say something along the lines of like, when you come back, it's like almost like you celebrate it, right? Like you're like, good, I came back, even if your mind was gone for like 3 minutes, and like I literally remember like, what the hell have I been doing for the last month? I have not been doing what I'm supposed to be doing.
It's happening all the time.
I'm glad you're saying that though, because like a lot of people say, I can't meditate because when I sit down and meditate, my mind's going crazy, and that's actually why we meditate. You know what I mean? But I just want to say that everyone goes through that. If you're like, oh yeah, like I tried and I'm just not, I can't, my mind's too crazy, I can't do it. Like that's actually the point of why we do meditate. So like literally sometimes within 2 seconds when I go to meditate, I jump on a train and I'm somewhere else, and then I come back eventually, and then I'm like, okay, I go again. So it's like, that's the journey though of just like not letting everything pass. Is also what they said, like let those thoughts pass, like just kind of see them floating by and come back to your breath. Let them pass. Like that's the journey.
And don't go into it thinking like, oh, I need to relax, I'm going to meditate. Because it may not, you don't want to be attached to how you feel after. Maybe it's not a relaxing meditation. Maybe it's one you had to really work really hard. But again, I liked the productivity aspect of it. Like it felt like I'm actually doing something. You are slowing down patterns of your mind, of your brain, of your mind. And again, you're training it. You're training. It's literal practice of focusing.
I think before we go into the next thing, it'd be helpful for people to hear what a pattern is, because we're saying patterns of the mind, but I don't think tangibly they're seeing or like applying it to like actually their day to day. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe if you have some examples, I can come up with some examples too of just like what that would be like in their everyday that actually would be slowed down through meditation.
Basically, any kind of reaction, like any kind of like you have a thought like, oh, like it's your emotion that you have to the reaction. I think that's like patterns are, again, they talk about sankharas too, but basically anything that comes and we have a craving towards it or an aversion towards it, that's basically a pattern. If it's something that you're reacting to, because if something just comes up and and you let it pass, you didn't react to it. So no patterns are created. If something comes up and you're like, oh, I really want to do that again, I wish I was there now, that's a pattern. If something comes up like, oh gosh, I hated that, I hope I avoid that, like I don't want that to ever happen again, that's a pattern. So what you're trying to catch before you get to that is your reaction to it. So if you practice not reacting, then you're slowing down those patterns.
Yeah, it is not to, and people might say like, oh, you're not supposed to want to have a good feeling. Isn't that the point of life, to like have all that stuff? And I had a little bit of a cluster F with that as well. I was like, aren't we supposed to feel joy and positivity all the time?
Yeah.
And I think the answer to that is yes, but the whole point is that you can become attached
It's the craving
to that,
after
craving it. And so it's almost like just allowing yourself to like, oh, that is what did they say? Like, that's interesting. Did they say that, or is that where we got that?
We got
else?
that from somewhere else along
We
the
got
way.
that
It's the same
somewhere.
thing, but it creates this neutrality. But
Yeah.
feel the pleasant sensation. Notice that it's pleasant. Like, I really like this.
Yeah.
The pattern comes when it's over and we want it again. That's the pattern.
And we're suffering because of it.
Yes.
Because that's not there.
I remember Dr. Suki's, infinity symbol in the book that we give a lot of people. It's like the positive and the negative swing, but in quantum physics and energetic, like it's the most powerful you can be is when you're in that center, when you're not too high and when you're not too low. And I think this is a perfect practice for people to find that balance as well.
Something that I wanted to share that was a takeaway for me. So my experience was definitely like being still, feeling the sensations. That was all transformational, I would say. It gained so much. But another one was actually comparison, because we actually had a friend who went before us to do a Vipassana as well. And he actually had like this out of body experience where he like left his body, he floated around the room, like really spiritual, like astral projection stuff that I had never experienced in my life. So actually, Matt and I didn't know this until after the fact. But so, he told us this story. This is what happened to him. So, okay, we're going to do our thing. And we're actually both separately expecting that to happen to us. The entire freaking time. Oh, it's going to happen. Here it comes. It's going to happen. And actually at the end of it, it never happened to me. It never happened to me. And I'm like, I can't believe that I let someone's experience, that expectation and comparison actually, I wouldn't say rob me of my experience, but it did, like, it was a piece of my entire experience because I was thinking about what he had, that I was going to do that. Why wasn't it happening? Really, and I just want to share that was like a really big teacher for me. And that's what everyone does, comparing, expecting. And actually it does lead to some sort of suffering, I would say, because of it.
We had the same exact experience, except for me around day 7. So I must be more evolved than you because I figured it out 3 days before we ended it. This is what happened. I think, and I will kind of talk about it, but we keep saying sensations. After you start noticing your breath, you clear the mind, then you start doing this body scan.
Which I was so pumped to do.
Yeah, you do the body scan, you feel into it, and maybe we can talk a little bit more about it in a second, but eventually, like, you're doing it for so long, you almost become like no thing. You become nothing. You kind of feel the energy just flowing in your body. And again, this isn't to attach that you have to feel that as well, but again, you do 10 hours meditation for 10 days, like you're gonna feel some stuff, right? But I remember it's like, I was scanning left, scanning right, and then my energy felt like it was starting to kind of like move this way. And I remember moaning to, oh, this is it. This is it. I'm about to go. Shit, nothing happened. And then day 7, something happened, and it was about, I remember they talk about detaching from the outcome and what it is. And I had this moment, I was like looking for, oh, here we go. And then all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, you idiot. Like, that's not what this is. But what you're looking for this moment, but what it is actually this moment right here. Like, that's the gift. That's the profoundness. Like, you have your breath, you have this ability to go inward and feel into that. And that was for me like one of the most powerful experiences. And I had another experience too, but it was like everything that you could ever want, ever need, ever desire, like it's within you. And if you can just tune into that, like that's the beauty. That's the astral projection that he experienced.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I have meditated so much, but you've taught me this form
Show
of
off.
meditation. Well, we all have, but I meditate so much. Hold on, I actually just
think you're better than us?
That's what I really wanted to say, because I actually really relate to the very beginning of my meditation journey. I was learning like transcendental meditation, which is probably like what your friend's saying, like you kind of do leave your body, and that's what I thought it was. It was like I would disconnect, but this is actually makes me so connected to myself, where that trance-like state I was going in, I realized like does not really apply to everyday life. And if you talk to anybody who meditates, the point of meditation is to be able to walk with your meditation in your day-to-day.
Yeah.
So before I learned this, like my meditation experience was getting into that trance-like state, and like literally I feel like escapism now. Like I actually see that really clearly. Like I would get into a trance-like state, not do any of the work, but just be in a completely high frequency place is what it felt like, and then come back to my day and be like, yeah. And now I'm like, oh my God, anicca. But now I feel like I actually feel like with that meditation, it trains you to be able to actually respond to stimulus rather than react to it. Where in the past, I was just like, I'm outside of it.
And the more time that you spend in this like harmonious state, right? You're feeling you're equanimous, things are coming up, you're just noticing sensations, whether they're pleasant or unpleasant. You create harmony in your life, and you create it in, outside of you as well. And like, it was really cool when I first got back, I'm feeling really good. Obviously I feel shifted. I just spent 10 days doing this, and it bleeds into everything in your life. Like things that we were spending so much time in like a harmonious state that if something was a little off, that was now the weird thing. And we're like, oh, we want to get back to the balanced state. So it's not that you always stay in balance, but the more time you train and practice and like you, again, just practice that, then you'll know like, oh, you want to always get back to that. It's never a point to always be balanced and nothing ever bothers you or you're never triggered, but you find a way back a lot easier the more time you spend.
Can I share our practical story of what happened and like literally what Matt said when we walked out? Like,
Yeah.
So Loren comes back from this meditation, and like you said, you were feeling so good. I also had a lot of time alone. We were like in this groove for like, it felt like 5 days or something of just like peace and bliss and amazingness. And we come into REV that morning, and I'm like, I see this motorcycle on the street. It's like this beautiful red motorcycle. And I'm like, want, need, craving. And you're like, aversion. And we were so not used to being in a state of like dissonance with each other that we noticed it immediately, first of all. And I'm one of those people that I'm like, we got to talk about this, like the dissonance and all of it. And you're like, we're going to meditate because that was our plan before we adjust. And we're just going to meditate. And if it still bothers us after 10 minutes, we can talk about it. Yeah. And we go back in the room and meditate this way. And like I said, I used to try to escape. So I'm sitting there with all this anger and craziness and just like, oh, and it just moved through me. And then hilariously enough, we walk out of the room and Matt greets us by jumping out and screaming, anicca, which I think you're going to get into what that means. And I was like, that crazy. I was going to say bitch.
And you said it.
And you did.
Knew exactly what that moment was, but I was like, oh my God, we were equanimous, and we just felt like such a dissonance that it was so obvious. But you were like, if this is still bothering us in 10 minutes, I am happy to talk to you about it.
It's such a good like reminder of just, oh, this started as a sensation too. Like I heard something and I'm like, I don't like that. There's just the auditory sensation, and my mind was like, we don't like that.
Yeah.
So once I got back to like, oh, it's just a sensation. The field was balanced, and not that we don't ever talk about that again, but we're going to make sure that we feel balanced as we talk about it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I'm getting from this is like what we always say to people. It's not if things are going to happen, it's when. And no matter how balanced you are, no matter how in tune you are, state of coherence, like life just tends to give you pleasant or not so pleasant, unless we're attached to it, opportunities for growth in every experience. So super powerful. What is anicca's definition? Is it the craving versus aversion?
Anicca is basically impermanence.
Impermanence.
Nothing is permanent.
Nothing.
Anicca. It's nature. Like everything changes.
I'm gonna say it's gonna get loud for a second because I'm gonna do the imitation.
He's so
I'm not gonna
loud,
be
you
like
guys.
super loud, but like I just will never ever forget the word anicca. Because this guy has Essen Glenka has a very heavy Indian accent, and then like he'll talk a little bit during the beginning of your meditation. Then for like the last like 30 minutes is nothing, right? Like he doesn't say anything.
So he like. He says something and then it's quiet, and then he says
a couple
when
things.
You know it's over,
and then when it's
like,
when it's to end it, anicca.
It's startling.
And you're like,
I was startled at least.
I'm always.
That's exactly what he did when we walked out of the room.
Meditation's over. I did it.
Yeah. Cool.
But yeah, it means to change. Like that. This will change too. You're having a pleasant sensation. This will change too. everything arises and passes, arises and passes. And like, that's what the beauty too, that you find the more that you do this. The whole point of spending time noticing your sensations, you get deeper and you get deeper and you feel more subtle things. We talk about in here of energy, you know, atoms, frequent subatomic particles are vibrating, arising and passing, arising and passing. It's literally within us. So you get to like feel that. And that's just when you can spend time in that, when something happens in front of you that is not pleasant or you want to choose it, you're like, oh, this will change too. It's pleasant. It's great. It's so lovely. Take it in, and this might change too.
And when we do give it attention, that's when it becomes the pattern that we're talking about. So like we work with people with so many different patterns because they have subconsciously given it attention, and they're reiterating that pattern each and every time. So like every time you're triggered or feeling a reaction to something, it's an opportunity to be like, this is actually temporary, and I'm going to choose to not put my attention towards it. That way it passes faster. But if we give our attention to it, that's when it sticks around and becomes a thing.
When we put our mind, when we think about it and like want it to be a certain way, that's,
I think it's really hard for a lot of people though to believe that something is impermanent, right? Because they have been a certain way, felt a certain way for so long that it's like hard to see the, you know, the other end of the end of the rainbow kind of thing, that it's possible to change. And my profound moment, and I'll share it very quickly, you know, we were talking about energy being locked in our body, getting in that state of like feeling the sensations, and those are just things or patterns that are arising, giving that attention, and that things can shift and change, you know, before going to Vipassana. I'm going to say Vipassana, because I got the listener. Like I was dealing with major back issues that would like really debilitate me for a long period of time. I've shared this story before, but it was around like the end of this, you know, 10-day meditation that I was feeling the sensations, and one day
because you're sitting,
and so it triggered my back pain, and I'm listening to this guy say, hey, nothing lasts forever. I'm like, screw you, because this really hurts. But you know, for 45 minutes I did not move. I didn't move. I felt a stabbing pain in my low back. A pattern was rising. I didn't want to push it away. I just kept feeling it. And we were finishing chiropractic school too. So I was like, I know, like biologically and neurologically, like I'm fine. It's just a sensation being, I know someone's not really stabbing me. And so I just sat with it. And like, I want to share this because I think people like, we tend to like push things away and not sit with it. I tell people this all the time, and it's hard for them to really grasp it, but I leaned into it. The pain amplified. It got worse, right? Then it felt like there was a shooting pain down my leg. And then at one point in time, it felt like someone poured kerosene on my leg, sparked a match, and my leg felt like it was on fire. Again, for 10 minutes, I sat with that fire. I'm like, God, please say Anicca soon, because I'm ready to get up. But I'm so grateful it didn't, because what happened, and I hope people get this, you know, get the why I'm sharing this, that heat in an instant went to an extreme cold, the equal and opposite of that. And I was like, whoa, that was interesting. And from that moment on, I have never experienced that debilitating back pain that I used to have to deal with on a very regular basis. So to me, that was a miracle. I cannot fully explain it. I got ideas based on how we work with people, but that's the beauty, right? If you look within all that stuff, these patterns and that energy that's built up, it is not being utilized in a way that your body truly wants to express. And by looking at our stuff and allowing it to begin shifting through you, being in that more state of coherence, it frees you up from that crap that's been holding you back, so that way you can show up as a better version of yourself.
That's a great example of integration, like what it really means to integrate. That was a physical manifestation of something from his past that he probably never looked at, or he kind of looked at it and pushed it back down or whatever. It's just this thing I have to deal with. And now he had this time to be like, just to sit with it and not react to it. And when it didn't have anything to react, like there's no energy there, it was able to move through. Like that's the whole thing of like, you have to know thyself. You have to know what's going on. And it's not just like to sit there and suffer in your pain. Like, oh my gosh, I'm in so much pain, and just like sit here. It's just to notice, like to really just know the sensation, because it will pass. It's just not to react. That's the whole thing. It's not to react.
Easier said than done, but that
It's a
is
practice.
the work.
That's the work. Yeah.
I think the craving piece is actually the hardest for me. Like the aversion, I'm like, I can sit with pain, I can sit with these things, but when it's something I really, really like that comes up, I'm like, I want to hold on to it. And that's that rhythm thing that you were just talking about with that wheel where like I think about like our bandwidth, and if I actually just like let it move through me, my bandwidth says, this ain't nothing. This is what we always do. This is our balance point. And then I start actually attracting more of those experiences rather than if I'm saying, oh my God, this is so amazing. This is the coolest thing that's ever happened to me. Every cell of my body is like, well, this is outside of our bandwidth and this is a really good experience, but still outside of our bandwidth. And whenever you go and experience that, it takes up so much energy that we can't actually stabilize that and attract more of those experiences too.
Well, it's an attachment, right? And like me and Mon, and I know you guys too, like magic moments happen all the time. But when we come from that place of attachment, like some of the coolest things in the world is like we've had no idea that person, place, thing was going to show up. It's like the memories that get created. So it's always way more powerful to be like, yeah, it's like we want to make things happen, but the sweet spot is like doing the work, but like, hey,
That empty vessel.
let's see what happens. Let's have some magic happen, which is super powerful.
Yeah.
Awesome. You anything else to say, Mon?
No, I think this is probably inspiring a lot of people to look into Vipassana, and they're all over the country. Like we said, there's usually like a wait list to get in and a launch time, like a drop date when they're actually going to open it up. So look into it. It's completely free. It's a beautiful program, and if that doesn't call to you at this time, just starting, like she was saying, 5 to 10 minutes a day of focusing on just your breath. These thoughts are going to come in and out during this whole 5-10 minute window, whatever you do. And just, it's a journey to do it. It's a beautiful practice. It's something we all do and serves us deeply.
So the nose breathing, just again, you're just breathing naturally. It's not even nose breathing. It's just being aware of your breathing out of your nose. Just starting with that. And then the actual Vipassana like meditation is you start there to train your mind, because if you start just scanning your body, then you're going to be all over the place. So when you feel like you've done that for a long period of time, you get right into the Vipassana meditation, which is basically starting from the top of the head, working your way of awareness of the sensations. Feel the top of your head, feel your ears, feel your face, your nose. Like don't leave anything unseen and unobserved, all the way down, and just notice. And then you do that long enough, down and back up, down and back up. You'll have that uncomfortable feeling come up, and just sit with it for a second. Notice it. Try not to react. The whole point is to be aware and maintain balance of the mind. Awareness with balance of the mind. So awareness and looking at it in an equanimous state, staying equal to it. But I had a very similar experience too. But it wasn't with pain. I had some pain, like I had knee pain. It's so awkward. Like I'm not used to sitting like that. You know, I was on a meditation bench and knees bent, and I had knee pain. I'm like, I can deal with that. I can deal with this. I can deal with that. But I had like this like pit in my stomach, that feeling of like an anxious like feeling, and that was my sensation to sit with. And I noticed that when I felt that, I was like, oh, I'm anxious. My mind was like naming it. You know what I mean? Oh, you're anxious. Oh, you're anxious maybe because of this thing and maybe because of that. Like that, I really got to catch myself finding out like where my mind takes this little sensation that I'm feeling in my stomach. And so that was one of my most profound meditations, was where I got out of body after
Astral
I
floating.
didn't want to make you jealous, so I didn't tell you. But I had the sensation, and sometimes remaining equanimous and remaining of balanced mind will look like this, where I'm like, oh, like, you know, I'm like, don't react, you know, it's not easy, but like I stayed in there. I just felt the sensation, try not to react. I didn't react. I kind of kept scanning the body. And then all of a sudden it dissipated. And then when it dissipates, you're not like, yes, I hope this stays. You just notice that it dissipated. But that's the whole practice, is just to kind of scan, again, start with the nose, focus to train your mind to focus on something. And then from the top of the head all the way down through your arms, legs, and back up, and just noticing every little sensation and just remaining balanced.
And a sensation, so we can put some words to it, could be hot, could be cold,
Itchy.
tingling, itchy. Itchy's the worst.
Itchy is
That
the
was
word.
that was harder
Itchy is
than
the most
pain.
interesting because it also moves.
Yeah.
Sometimes it moves, like or pain can move too. Like
Yeah.
you'll see the pain move. Like maybe
Yeah.
maybe you're feeling pain here and actually like moves. It's great. It's cool.
Yeah.
But-
It's cool. You should know, what
Yeah.
you're feeling.
And that could, like for our REV clients, people that get adjusted on a regular basis like this, we talk about if you feel like you need to move, move. But I sometimes think that if you have an itch or a sensation or whatever,
Notice.
doing your best to not move
Yeah.
on the table, the 15 minutes that you're face down and face up, like I feel like is super powerful for people to like drop even deeper into
And
that.
again, the reason behind it is if you have an itch on your nose, I have an itch, scratch. That's a habit pattern of the mind to react. You're reacting. So if you can be like, oh, I have an itch, and just like notice it, and you don't react, that's slowing down a habit pattern of your mind. You're moving in the right direction. Like, again, that's what I could hang my hat on of like, oh, I'm actually doing something in this meditation.
But if you do itch, maybe you notice
Wait
it
longer. Yeah.
Yeah, like one time I remember I went for the itch. Like I had to.
I got a
for the
freaking
itch.
itch.
Initially, you had to
It was like a
scratch.
5-minute thing.
Yeah.
And I finally did it and I was like, oh, I think I made that pattern deeper. Oh, I punished myself for, a few minutes or whatever, but I'm like, it's okay. So even if you just notice the itch and don't react right away, that's a
That's what they
win.
say too.
That's
like,
a win.
Like even when they say to not move, they say try not move, but maybe instead of waiting a minute to move, you wait 2 minutes, or you go 5 minutes without moving. That's still productive. It's just the idea of it. But yeah, you don't want to like idiot. It does feel good though. After 10 minutes, I'm like, oh.
I think also too, like when you have an itch, you don't do it, and then it goes away or whatever it may be. And this could look different, like for different people, hot, cold, and you just feel that change. It gives you more of that reaffirming. I was like, oh, everything isn't permanent, and like you do that enough, that then translates to your outside world as well. It's like,
And it may not be easy again if you go to practice this and like you don't feel any sensations. Like just keep scanning, just keep going, even if it's like you feel your hand on your jeans like this, or you feel the cloth on your skin, just like any kind of awareness, and hang out there for a minute, give it a good try, and then keep moving. You'll find if you keep practicing over and over and over, you'll start to feel more sensations and get subtler and subtler.
but don't be wanting more sensations, right?
Yeah, don't be looking for it or like, oh, I wish I had this sensation. Just notice what you notice.
I love it.
But yeah.
Anything else to add, Erica?
I recommend it for people and their partners.
And give us
I won't be
feedback.
going.
Like drop comments below if you are starting to meditate, or come back to this video and let us know how it's been going. We'd love to cheer you on, answer any questions. We're here for you.
Yes.
Awesome. Great jam session. Love this conversation. I hope people got value, especially if they're not going to go on a 10-day silent meditation retreat, but they can utilize this stuff. So hope you guys enjoyed this conversation. Yeah, like Monica said, if you just start to do some of this meditation and you start feeling some shifts, please in the comments share kind of what you've experienced. We'd love to hear from you. Please like, please subscribe, share with a friend, and until next time, have a wonderful day.